I'd like to start by extending a very warm welcome and thank you for joining our presentation today. My name is Tiffany Wood-Lysette, and I am a school social worker with the Safe Schools and Wellbeing portfolio at the Thames Valley District School Board. And my colleague Christy, who's on screen with me at this moment, will also introduce herself now.
Hi, everyone. As Tiffany said, my name is Christy Darnell. I am also a social worker, and I am with Thames Valley, and I am also attached to the Safe Schools and Wellbeing portfolio, along with Tiffany and another a wonderful group of people. So thanks to all of you for joining us.
Yeah, so speaking of that wonderful group of people, including our project partner for the Family Wellbeing Community Workshop series named Caitlin Chow, we are really excited to be a part of this kind of community collaboration between local school boards and our community partners, where we host these Family Wellbeing Workshop presentations online throughout the year with varying topics and presenters. And so the slide that you can see before you has a couple of important bits. The first is actually a live link. You can see it says bit.ly, so it's a bit.ly link, which will take you, if you hover over that, directly to our website. And on that website for Family Wellbeing Community Workshop Series, you will also find the list of upcoming presentations. And at the conclusion of today's presentation, we will again provide you with key contacts and more information about our project overall. And just before we introduce our speakers, I have a couple of things to bring to your attention as well. The first is I want to bring to your attention how to communicate with us. So you've joined us in a platform called Teams, and Teams has a couple of different functions, and we're broadcasting to you from a Teams function called Webinar. And so the way that you communicate with us on this platform, you'll notice when you join that your mic and camera are off and will remain off for the duration of the presentation. The way that you can indicate that you would like to communicate with us is to go, you can see on this slide here that there's a dark toolbar, and it has a blue square. And that blue square, although it's a little fuzzy, has two speech bubbles in it with a question mark. That is our Q&A function. And so if you look at the top of the toolbar across the screen for you, I would encourage you to click on that Q&A button. When you do, it will open a panel to the right of your screen, and you can see that our friend Christy here has already posted an initial message that tells you that this is the place where you can submit questions to us, and we will gather those up for the Q&A portion of the presentation today. And so we encourage you to do that if there's a question that comes to mind throughout the presentation. We likely will not pause the presentation and interrupt the presenter. However, we will gather all of those important questions for probably about a 15-minute period where we will ask our presenters to respond to audience questions at that time at the end of the presentation. So the other thing that we want to bring to your attention is also that this webinar is being recorded because we know the importance of the information, and we would like to be able to share it on our website following the presentation in a recorded format. And so that is also why we ask, at the tail end of the presentation, we may flip on the ability for you to use your mic if you don't have access to the Q&A function. If you do that, we respectfully ask you not to share your names or identifiers because we would like to continue to protect your privacy. And so in that same vein, if you have questions that are really specific to your family's unique needs, or you're discussing a family member, then what we'll do is we'll actually offer you contact information at the end of the presentation, just so that if you wish to send a private follow-up or question, then that's something that you can do privately and following the presentation. Another piece is that tonight's discussion in particular may cover some subject matter that might be a little bit upsetting to you, just depending on your previous experiences. And so if this is the case, we do encourage you, really importantly, to prioritize your well-being. And that might mean you need to take a break, walk away from the screen, or mute the sound. And we will be sure to give you advance notice or a heads up when we potentially start to get into some information that might share details of, case scenarios or that kind of thing. So Also, another reminder is that today's intended audience is parent guardians and parent caregivers. And so, if you need to, or adult caregivers of any kind, if you need to take a moment to scan your environment and be sure that you have accounted for any other listeners, we encourage you to just take a moment to do that now. And we wanted to give you the space to be able to do that. So that is a lot of description, reminders, disclaimers, and alsos. My apologies in advance, but we like to give you lots of information to get going. So we are absolutely thrilled today to welcome two organizations to discuss internet safety for caregivers. Our very own Ron Buren is joining us from Thames Valley District School Board's Information Technology Department, and he is an IT security administrator. There he is, giving you a wave there. Also with us today is Detective Jeremy Dan from London Police Services Internet Child Exploitation Unit, or ICE unit. And, we know that each of these presenters has a wealth of experience and knowledge in this area, so we're really excited to welcome them today. And so we'd like to start by saying a big thank you to both of our presenters for joining us. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn things over to Ron, who will share a recording that he recently made. And then following Ron's recording, we will hear from Detective Dan. And then, like I said, we will open the floor for question and answer time. So I have currently sharing slides, but I know that now is the time that Ron can flip his camera on, and it might just give us a second because it might take us some time to toggle the screen and get the recording going for you.
Thank you for taking the time to learn more about cyber hygiene and best practices. My name is Ron Buren. I work for the school board as an IT security administrator. We would like to share some common practices that families and caregivers can use to help protect students navigate their internet experiences. Some will find there is a lot of information in this presentation. Rest assured, we will be keeping our presentation available online for your reference. The information provided in this presentation is intended as general information to support families. Parents and caregivers should assess all information in light of their own circumstances, including the age and other relevant factors of the students in their households. The internet has become an integral part of our daily lives, and children have also embraced this technological advancement. The internet provides endless possibilities for children to learn, explore, and socialize. However, the internet also exposes children to various dangers, such as cyberbullying, online predators, and inappropriate content. There is a responsibility to protect children when they are online. In this discussion, we will focus on the best ways to protect children when browsing the web, using social media, and playing games online. We may ask ourselves, how did we end up here? How did we go from this incredible thing called the internet that permitted us to connect to the world to a conversation about cyber hygiene, and specifically as it pertains to our children? The internet was designed for the ability to connect. I would add, freely and easily connect. The first connection was between two computers the size of small houses at two different universities. The idea of requiring additional security was not much of a thought, as these were very expensive and large computers and not easily accessible to the public. There was a considerable amount of physical security in place, specifically locked doors and controlled entrances. The thought of people walking around with them in their pocket really was unfathomable. Slingshot to today, where children are using computers with more processing power than these early computers of the 1970s. We need to purposefully and intentionally add security and safety measures to our cyber presence. Be cyber aware. As a parent or caregiver, what should I do and be aware of online for the safety and security of my student? keeping in mind the design principle of the Internet, the easy flow and connection of data and information, people and devices. This also makes it easier for bad actors to be present. We do not have the same safety and protection measures online as we do offline. Children can come across harmful material very easily online. Online adults can interact with children and youth with no oversight. Supervision is of the utmost importance, as well as access to age-appropriate apps and activities. For the users and devices in your home, parental controls are readily available. Some internet providers may have this included with their service. They can also be purchased. In addition, some Wi-Fi routers also have parental controls. To find more information, go online and search for your make and model, plus the words parental controls. It is possible to set up limits per user. Control what times a device is available for use. For example, from 6 to 8 p.m. or not during sleeping hours. Also consider limiting how many hours per day. Add content filtering, what websites are blocked or allowed. Assign personal devices to specific users. Remember, some of these controls are for Wi-Fi and do not affect access to mobile data plans and the use of hotspotting. Contact your cell provider. They can assist you with controlling data usage and availability for a student's cell phone under your plan. Some devices have a screen time setting. Screen time lets you know how much time your student spends on apps, websites, and more. This way, you can make informed decisions about how the devices should be used and set limits as required. Effective safety strategies for K-12 students. Here are some frequently used safety strategies that can be of assistance. Teach students not to go with a stranger. This applies to our online presence as well. Young students in social media is a very risky environment. Bad actors do lure children to meet. Teach students not to wander off alone. Direct messaging with strangers for young students is also very risky behavior. Teach students to avoid talking to strangers. Students should understand that we do not always know who is on the other end of a communication. Our digital devices make it easy to use texting, voice, and video for communication. Young students who cannot spell or read do quickly learn how to send messages with a dictation feature on devices. Follow safety awareness at home. Harm to children is a very unfortunate occurrence, and it is important that we are aware and informed as to its presence. Talk to your student about online safety. Have an open and honest discussion with your student about the potential risks and dangers of being online. Help them understand what types of behavior and activities are appropriate and safe. Instruct your student if they see something that makes them uncomfortable or something strange. They can inform their parent or caregiver. Teach students to trust their instincts. It is possible a friend's account has been hacked and the student can be speaking or texting with a stranger. Strange behavior may be noticed by the way they are texting. Encourage students to reach out. Trusted adults at home and at school are great supports to assist students with any questions they may have. Encourage students to ask questions if they encounter any problems or feel uncomfortable about anything they see or experience online. Encourage open communication. Teach students internet safety rules, similar to the way we teach safety rules when riding a bike. We need to teach safety rules for using the internet. Teach responsible online behavior. Teach students to be responsible digital citizens and treat others online with respect and kindness. Surfing the web and social media apps. With the widespread use of social media apps and web browsers, students can easily connect with friends and family, share their thoughts and experiences, and consume a vast array of online content. However, the internet is also rife with risks such as cyberbullying, phishing scams, identity theft, and other forms of online harassment. Therefore, it is essential to practice safe online behavior and protect yourself while surfing the web and using social media apps. In this age of information, being aware of potential dangers and taking steps to mitigate them is crucial for maintaining your privacy and security online. Set clear rules and boundaries. Establish rules and boundaries for your students' online behavior, such as limiting the amount of time they spend online, which websites they can visit, and who they can communicate with. Discuss how to use the website, social media app, or game appropriately. Educate yourself. Stay up to date with the latest technology and social media trends so you can better understand the online world and the risks that come with it. Using social media is a tricky endeavor. Child exploitation risks and trends we are seeing are between the ages of 8 to 17, with the most common being 13-year-old females. Individuals who access children and youth online for sexual purpose often use sextortion, which is extortion, typically to gain money or more sexualized content. 90% of the events are occurring on common media platforms that we all know and many use every day. Also use reputable apps and only download apps from trusted sources such as the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. If you are unsure, look for independent reviews. Keep apps up to date. Keep personal information private. Teach your student to keep personal information such as their full name, address, and phone number private when online. Set your account to private. Use privacy-focused search engines like DuckDuckGo or StartPage to help protect your students' online privacy. Exposure to the internet by means of social media, picture sharing sites, video sharing, and live streaming sites is a real concern, as it has genuine danger associated to it. Discuss and review privacy risks with social media apps, games, websites. Each of these have different privacy settings and can carry different risks. Be aware of location sharing. Make sure your student understands the potential risks of location sharing and encourage them to only share their location with trusted individuals. Teach them about cyberbullying. Teach your student about cyberbullying, how to recognize it, and what to do if they or someone they know experiences it. Teach students to not engage. Students should be encouraged to report online bullying activities to trusted adults. Online protection measures. In today's digital age, protecting yourself online is more important than ever, and there are several measures you can take to safeguard your presence online and stay safe. Use strong passwords. Encourage students to use strong passwords and avoid using the same password for multiple accounts. A strong password can be a passphrase that is hard to guess, yet easy to remember, and 15 characters long. Do not share your passwords with anyone or leave it written down where others can read it. Consider the use of two-factor authentication on all accounts to provide an extra layer of security. Teach critical thinking. Continue to have Open dialogue to help children and youth establish safety practices that will protect them. Teach students to think critically about the information they encounter online. Help them distinguish between trustworthy and unreliable sources. Do not share personal information like where you live or go to school, your real name, or your age. This information is not okay to put online, and others should not be asking for it. Stay involved. Keep an eye on your students' online activity. Be aware of any changes in their behavior or mood that may indicate a problem. Ensure that the content your student accesses online is age appropriate and suitable for their level of maturity. Sometimes games may be appropriate, but the others connecting to the game can behave inappropriately. Utilize parental controls to limit student access to inappropriate content and set up filters to block websites that can contain explicit material. If your student plays online games, be aware of the potential risks, such as chat rooms or in-game messaging that could expose them to inappropriate content or contact with strangers. Controls can be applied to limit access to chat rooms or in-game messaging. Our reliance on the Internet means more time spent online and more risk children and youth are exposed to through online victimization. Parental control settings for your Wi-Fi can reduce this time. Consider turning Wi-Fi off overnight. There are software solutions that would permit this on a specific set of devices for a set of users. Speak to your Internet service provider to discover what is available to you. Keep devices updated. Keep all devices, including computers, tablets, and smartphones, up to date with the latest security updates and patches. Fantastic additional resources are readily available online. Please take the time to discover the excellent content available to parents, caregivers, and students. We invite you to search the TVDSB website for more information, or when you're there, click Students, then click Online Safety and Digital Citizenship. Some other informative websites for protecting your children online are kidsintheknow.ca, protectkidsonline.ca, protectchildren.ca, cybertip.ca. Please teach our students and youth to protect themselves online. Best practices continue to evolve. This information in this presentation is intended as general information to support families. Parents and caregivers should assess all information in light of their own circumstances, including the age and other relevant factors of the students in their households. I appreciate the opportunity to present this information for K-12 students. Thank you again for participating in our conversation on cyber hygiene.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron. We appreciate that. That video was absolutely full of information. Like, I might need to go back to it when we post the recording and pause every so often to Google a term that you said or to search my device name along with parental controls and figure out what I actually have access to. So thank you for suggesting some of those really practical things there. And also, I saw your list of resources in the slide. And so what we will do when we post the recording and when we even just post the poster linking to the recording as we wait for the edits of the recording is we will ask for that particular slide so that we can post it there and make it live and click live links for any parent or guardian who goes back to our website and is interested to know some of those live links that you mentioned, such as the Center for Child Protection out of Alberta, which is where that Kids in the Know program came from. That is a really, really excellent resource for guardians.
Those resources really are fantastic. I can't say enough good about them. I've been through their web pages over and over and the content there is very on point. Excellent.
Absolutely. Yep, I agree. And there's so many new things coming up and out all the time. For example, that fancy one that looks like a calculator on a kid's phone, but really behind it hides a chat or other things. And so one of the ways that we can sort of keep ourselves on top of all of the new developments over and over again is by searching these things and by going to these reputable websites or recommended websites so that we can understand what's coming up and out. But I also know that our other guest presenter is also going to touch on some of these sites or programs where our kids are potentially entering and we're not aware of
Yeah.
the level of risk or engagement. Yeah.
And to that point, I may have understated it. The independent reviews of applications your children are using is very important. Be aware. Put yourself in the know.
And if you have, for example, a Google suite of programs or say a Chromebook, for example, there is actually even a program called Family Link where you can connect devices to it and messages must be sent to the administrator of that in order to approve the addition of apps placed on any of those devices. I only know because I have Family Link on my devices. And so that's just another kind of key thing that caregivers or folks in the audience might be interested to know in order to be able to be aware of the things or the apps that our kids are adding to their devices. So in order to just make sure that we present all of the really good quality content we have for our caregivers, we do have a couple of questions rolling in and we're going to hold those for the end because we also want to welcome Detective Jeremy Dan to flip on his camera and join us. Thank you, Ron. We'll see you again at the end, we know, for question and answer. Detective Dan, welcome. We know that it might take you a little while to just get your slides up there and oriented for us, but thank you for patiently waiting.
No problem, Tiffany. Thanks so much. I'm going to fire up my... So I have been working in this field since 2010, and I have 2 young children of my own that are about to enter the risk zone for internet safety. So trust me when I say that I am super invested in keeping all of our children safer. I know that Ron touched on a lot of excellent internet safety points, and I think that maybe I can go a little quicker over some of my material because he did such a good job with them. And in other places, such as the sextortion topic, I think I'm going to dive in a little deeper so that everybody has the best chance of keeping their children completely free.
And you just brought to mind, Jeremy, that this would be the place where as we lead down the road of talking a little bit more about local information and about different things as it relates to crimes in particular of child exploitation, this would be the piece where we would just want to give that audience heads up that, if you've had previous experiences that have been troubling or upsetting, that you might hear some details that you might just want to, take a moment, take a step away, and that would be okay. We just want to give you the heads up that, some of the subjects he presents are those kind of, oh my goodness, that is something that I hadn't really considered as it relates to risk to kids.
And thanks for that, Tiffany. And just to emphasize, there's absolutely no explicit sexual content anywhere in this presentation. My job today is to help you understand the laws which come into play when we're talking about internet child exploitation. I'm hoping this may help you to make a decision about whether or not to contact police if you discover that your child has been exploited online in some way. We're going to be discussing the laws as they apply to this field, and that could potentially be triggering for anyone who's already been victimized. So if anyone needs to take a break, please feel free to do so, okay? So I'm going to jump right into it. A little bit of information about our unit. We were created in 2007, and that was as a response to an identified need in the community. Like, children were being victimized on the internet. They're complicated investigations. There was a need for qualified investigators. And so training in terms of internet investigation was required. At that time, the unit consisted of only 2 officers. In 2012, a 3rd officer was added, And as of this moment, our team consists of 3 officers. So that's myself and my 2 partners. And so we're at the moment the only 3 that are investigating offenses involving our community. And just to put a bit of scope in your minds to this problem, in 2021, our unit received almost 350 new cases of various types, all involving internet child exploitation. And in 2022, this number rose to 399. So more than one new case per day coming in. And as our name suggests, our role is to investigate internet-based crimes involving the exploitation of children. So the London Police Service is one of 27 agencies belonging to the Ontario Provincial Strategy to protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation on the internet. This is their logo. And so in short, LPS ICE, my team, is part of a province-wide network of investigators. We're working together, we're training together, we support each other. We all have the same goal of protecting our children from online predators. Okay, these are some of the partner agencies. And let's just jump right now into the law, okay? What the crimes actually look like in the internet realm. This is a short list of some of the most common offenses we deal with. The first 3 or top 3 and the bottom 1, so sexual interference, invitation to sexual touching, sexual exploitation, and sexual assault, are all what we call hands-on offenses or sexual touching between an offender and a child. The hands-on offenses are fairly straightforward. They're fairly easy to understand in that way. We'll see as we move on with some of the others that they're not quite as straightforward. If sexual activity occurs between 2 people and one of them is too young to consent, a crime has been committed, essentially. The other offenses listed here, internet luring and child pornography, are a bit more complicated. We'll come back to explain those in more detail as we move along. So in order to understand how each of the crimes comes into play, it's important to first understand the age of consent. In Canada, for someone to consent or give their permission to engage in sexual touching with another person, they must be at least 16 years old. Okay, so the age of consent in Canada is 16. When the person who is engaging in the sexual activity with the youth is someone in a position of trust or authority, such as a coach, that age goes up to 18 years. It's also important to remember that child pornography provisions, and I'll explain those as we move along, also do not apply to consenting young persons who do not distribute self-made materials. I'll make that much clearer as when we get to that portion. So in regard to age of consent, 2 exceptions exist when the people engaged in the sexual activity are close in age. So those 2 exceptions apply to the 14 or 15-year-old range. So 14 or 15-year-olds can consent to sexual activity as long as the partner is less than 5 years older and there's no relationship of trust, authority, or dependency or any other exploitation of the young person. This means that if the partner is 5 years or older than the 14 or 15-year-old, any sexual activity is a criminal offense, okay? There's also a close in age exception for 12 and 13-year-olds. A 12 or 13-year-old can consent to sexual activity with a partner as long as that partner is less than 2 years older. So a smaller age difference than in the 14 or 15-year-old range, okay? As long as there's no relationship of trust, authority, or dependency, then there's no crime committed, okay? Internet-based crimes against children generally fall within 2 main areas of the law. The first is internet luring. Ron touched on this briefly in his presentation. Internet luring is any telecommunication between an offender and a child which is done to facilitate or make easier the commission of a sexual crime against that child. Don't let the telecommunication fool you. This includes any form of digital communication between an offender and a child. An example, which we run into quite often, is a parent finding a chat on their child's device in which an adult offender is asking the child to take and send sexual images. In this example, the child pornography offenses under Section 163 are those that are being facilitated or made easier or more likely to occur. For internet luring, the offenses that can be facilitated are broken down by the age of the victim. There are a variety of sexual offenses that qualify when the victim is less than 18 years old. More that are added when the victim is less than 16 years old, and another offense that qualifies when the victim is less than 14 years old. So the offenses which qualify for internet luring when the victim is less than 18 years old are sexual exploitation, incest, child pornography, and sexual assault. Okay? Sexual exploitation, again, is sexual activity between an adult in a position of trust or authority over the victim who is 17 years old or younger. Okay? Incest is sexual activity among siblings. This list is the offenses which qualify for internet luring when the victim is less than 16 years old. Please keep in mind that the offenses listed in the previous slide for under 18 are still in play here. They still apply if the victim is less than 16. These ones are additional offenses that apply. Okay, this is a bit confusing. I understand that. It's just the way that luring is laid out in the criminal code. I'm going to do my best to make it as clear as possible. So the offenses that come into play when the victim is under 16 are section 151, which is sexual interference, 152, which is invitation to sexual touching, 160 sub 3, which is bestiality in presence of a person under 14 or inciting a person under 16 to commit bestiality, 173 sub 2, which is exposing the genitals to a person under 16, and section 280, which is abduction of a person under 16. And so the one additional offense that can be facilitated when the victim is less than 14 years old is section 281, or abduction of a person under 14. So again, please keep in mind that if our victim is, say, 13, then all of that list of offenses come into play. And if any one of them are facilitated or made more likely to occur or made easier for the offender to commit using that telecommunication, then an offense has occurred. Okay. It's also important, I'm just going to back up to that slide one more time. It's also important to remember that the offense itself that's being facilitated doesn't have to occur. So the offender doesn't have to successfully obtain child pornographic images from a victim in order for the luring offense to have occurred. They simply have to ask for them. So the logic is they're trying to facilitate that crime or make it more likely to occur, and that simple asking is a crime in and of itself. Okay, so the second area of the law we deal with most often is related to child pornography. Okay, the definition is found under section 163 of the Criminal Code. And so the actual definition is a visual depiction of a person under the age of 18 years, either engaged in sexual activity or with a focus on the sexual organs. The visual depiction must be made for a sexual purpose. This is an important element to consider. For example, certain medical textbooks may feature close-ups of child genitalia, but because they're meant as an educational tool, they do not fit this definition. They're not created for a sexual purpose. Okay. And also, just to know, the term child pornography is somewhat outdated and has become a bit controversial. There's a concern that it equates child sexual abuse material with adult pornography. There's a bill currently in the House of Commons which intends to update the term child pornography to child sexual abuse material. There are 4 different separate offenses all relating to child pornography. So production, which is creation of the material. Possession, which is simply having control over those media files. Distribution, which is sharing it with 3 or more people. And accessing child pornography, which comes into play when you may view child pornography on a website, but you haven't actually downloaded the file and you don't have complete control of it. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. I get it that this can be complicated, confusing material. If anyone has any questions in the QA, I'm happy to clarify all of these points, okay? So I've sort of touched on this in the sexual purpose portion. But also keep in mind the dominant characteristic or the focus of the visual depiction has to be the sexual organs of the child, or it has to show the child engaged in an actual sexual act. Okay, so there's a difference between child pornography and child nudity. A picture of a child naked at, say, the beach when they're a toddler, where there is no focus on sexual organs, genitals, and it's not made for a sexual purpose, it's not going to fit the legal definition. Okay, so photos taken of one's own children in the context of bathing, no sexual purpose, no focus, not illegal. Okay, another common offense that we are asked to investigate is voyeurism. Okay, this one actually can be even more complicated than the other two. There are 3 key points which have to be established to prove voyeurism. It has to be done surreptitiously, which is a fancy word for in a sneaky manner, so that the person being recorded has no knowledge of it. The person being recorded has to have an expectation of privacy, a reasonable one, and the act must be done for a sexual purpose. So there is that sexual purpose caveat again, as we saw with the child pornography definition. As I mentioned, voyeurism cases can be complicated to prove. Each element of this offense is a bit subjective. The definition of a reasonable expectation of privacy is arguably unclear, meaning both sides of the argument can be made. We had a case in 2012 in which a local teacher was recording students in what we believed was a surreptitious manner. He was using a camera disguised as a pen to record students in hallways and classrooms, so in public areas of the school. And so each one of these 3 key components to voyeurism was in doubt, or could be argued either way. And this case literally was argued and appealed all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, who finally ruled that all 3 elements were present and convicted this offender. Okay, so hopefully now we're all clear, have a better understanding of the law. Let's move into something a bit more interesting. Where did the predators hunt for targets? Ron touched on a lot of these. Unfortunately, the answer to this question is everywhere that children go online. All of these platforms, okay? So predators looking to exploit children have a vast choice of internet tools, looking for their prey, and looking to trade and collect child abuse images. Okay, they are on instant messengers. So Snapchat is the biggest one we're seeing these days. Chat IW, Chat Avenue are also full of offenders. Social media programs, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Instagram I'm going to touch on when we move into the sextortion piece. It's often a place where offenders are making first contact with our children. Youth gaming sites, Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, Discord. We are receiving reports that offenders are there. We are finding logins and usage of these platforms on the offenders' devices when we've located them on a search during a search warrant and digitally examine them. We're finding that they're there. They're posing as children there. They're seeking contact with our kids there. Okay. Also, webcam chat sites. This is also a big problem for our local youth. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth on Omegle. These 2 sites are very similar, Omegle and Chat Roulette. They're simply a random way for our kids to be put in a one-on-one conversation with adult offenders. Okay. So social media, Ron talked quite a bit about this, and it's a big problem for us. I'm 49 years old. When I was growing up as a young person, I didn't have this temptation. I didn't have the desire to connect with my friends in this way. And it's totally human nature and understandable. It's going to be an uphill battle for us to fight that impulse for social contact. but we just have to keep in mind that there's predators that are using that to their advantage. Okay, they're reaching out to our children, they're posing as other children, they're very convincing in the deceit scams that they use. They have photos of children that they send to our children as a way to convince them that they're real. And so we just need to be really keeping a close eye on exactly what our children are doing online. And Ron touched on this and did a great job with that. So Snapchat, as I mentioned, is an application involved in numerous occurrences that we deal with. It's literally designed to delete images and videos and chats once they're opened by the recipient. In other words, it's meant to hide content from someone, whether that's hidden by use from their parents, whether it's, you know, by one party of a relationship from the other party. By nature, it's meant to be secretive. But LPS ICE, our team, has received investigations from just about every known social media application. Instagram, Tumblr, Kik, WhatsApp, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok, Bumble. We're working in partnership with many of these platforms in order to streamline information so that when an offense has occurred on that platform, we have access to things like subscriber information and the media that was exchanged so that we can hope to identify either the offender or the child, whichever is in our jurisdiction. This is the Omegle platform that I talked about. We're getting many calls about it. You may or may not have heard of it. It can be accessed on any browser. There's no additional software or application required. Literally any child with unsupervised access to the internet could type in the web address and be on this platform in seconds, okay? So the way this website works is once you have loaded this page, you simply hit the text or video buttons shown here in blue, and you're randomly connected to any of the sometimes 30,000 plus users that are online using the site, okay? So once they've hit that video chat, they're connected with a person, and oftentimes the person on the other end of that chat is going to be an adult male, and they are going to be sometimes partially clothed, sometimes fully naked. They may be exposing themselves to our children. So Ron spoke a little bit about blocking websites, but if any parent or caregiver here tonight hasn't heard of this site, maybe you should add that to one of the block sites on your home computer, okay? I first heard of this platform about 10 years ago when an upset mother called, let me know her 9-year-old had been on the site, had been connected randomly to another child who was reporting being abused, and we were able to connect the dots and figure out where that child was and who he was. But it was my first experience with this site. I really had hoped at that time that it would just sort of fizzle out and go away. Unfortunately, it's become even more popular today than it was then. So a little bit now about how we conduct our investigations. We go often into reactive mode because, as I said, we're 3 investigators. We received a ton of new cases, and unfortunately, our youths are being approached online quite frequently. And the good news, though, is that those occurrences are coming to our attention, and we're doing everything in our power to identify the offenders on the other end, okay? So we also conduct undercover operations where we pose as children. We go on chat platforms known to be populated by offenders and targeting children. And as I said, we pose as children. They commit offenses, and we are recording the chats, and we go to court and explain to the judge or jury what's gone on, and the offenders are being convicted. So that's good. We are also working in partnership with platforms such as Facebook, Google, Instagram. All of those platforms are operated out of the US. They're mandated by law there to report any offending that comes to their attention on their platform. They report that to a nonprofit agency called NECMEC, or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That then goes to a similar agency in Ottawa, and when the offender or victim live in London, Ontario, they send it right to my team, and we're able to then, as I mentioned, either search the residence of the offender after a bunch of breadcrumbs haven't been followed to get us that far, and locating devices and searching to find out what's going on, or we're reaching out to a victim if that's who happens to be here, and letting the caregiver know what's going on, and just to try to keep that child safe, and prevent repetition of the offense. And the funny thing is that my team is actually much more likely to work with police from other countries, other parts of Canada, even other continents, than we are to work with other police officers within our own service. Simply because offenders are being connected with children everywhere in the world. And we do our best to try to get past those international boundaries and create strong cases and convict offenders. So I've spoken a little bit about Google, Microsoft, Instagram. I think I got a little bit ahead of myself with this slide, but this is basically what I just went through with NECMEC, etc. So sextortion, Ron did a great job of explaining what this is, so I don't really need to reinvent the wheel here. Simply put, it's blackmail. What we're seeing for the most part is this done for profit. And so, as Ron mentioned, often the targets are our young males, and it is starting often on Instagram, where our young males are receiving random ad requests from attractive young females. Our young males are interested in them. They begin chatting. There's a short conversation. They're asked to move to different platforms where they can live stream content. When they move onto the other platform and the live streaming begins, our young men are often exposing themselves. What they don't know is that they're being recorded. And immediately after receiving the sexual content, the bad actor here, or the sextorter, is making a demand for money. Okay. Occasionally, we're seeing this happen with our young females. In that case, often the demand is for sexual photos and videos, so further additional material versus a payment. But I would say probably 95% or more of the cases that we're seeing of this way targeted males and have demanded payment. In many cases, our kids are sending money, even though they don't have a lot to send. Occasionally, we're seeing the bad actor trying to intimidate the victim, threatening to leak the content online, share it directly with the used friend's family if they don't comply. It's common for the offender to share screenshots of the used contacts. So, as I mentioned, when that contact starts on Instagram, they're making a list of the contacts there, and then the threat is either pay me or I'm going to send this material to these contacts that you have. Terrifies our youth, understandably. They're incredibly embarrassed, they're humiliated, and they do everything in their power to make it stop. These people are often in faraway countries. They're strictly doing it for profit, and so they're not going to stop. If there's any indication that the youth is going to pay, they'll just continue as long as contact is continued, okay? There's bartering that goes on. If the youth says they cannot pay, we've seen payments of all different amounts, extremely low occasionally, but they'll take what they can get. If the sextorter demands money, payment forms vary from online payment providers like PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, etc. Gift cards for Amazon, Google Play, Steam, e-transfers directly from bank accounts. So if your child is asking you for Google Play cards or Steam or anything similar, you should just maybe be asking some tough questions and ensuring that they're actually using it for the purpose that you think they are, versus sending a code to a bad actor in another country trying to make this extortion scheme go away. Okay. So there's plenty of tactics these people are using. They offer gift or money to the youth sometimes in exchange for the sexual content. They're targeting multiple siblings or friends connected to the victim. They're infiltrating gangs or clubs on things like Fortnite. So if your child has 50 friends on his Fortnite account that you don't know in person, some of those could be adults. Some of those could be sextortion bad actors. Some of those could be adult offenders with a sexual purpose in mind. So Ron touched on this, but I will as well. You should know every friend on your child's friends list. Everybody that they're communicating with, you should absolutely know beyond any doubt is a real child, is someone that you don't mind your child spending time with. Okay, over and over and over again, we're getting cases where an adult has infiltrated these small groups and bad things have happened. Occasionally we're able to identify the offender and charge them, but we can't rewind the clock and make the offense not have happened. Okay. They often create several accounts to make it seem more than one person is targeting the youth. They demand that the youth create other accounts on social media. Again, threatening to share is the biggest piece of this. So what should they do if they're being sextorted? If someone is threatening to share your nude image or video, there is help. As I said, immediately stop talking to them. Deactivate. Don't delete any of the accounts you're using to communicate. But stop talking to them right away. This is often, for the most part, a for-profit scheme. If the communication is shut off, they'll simply move on to the next target. They are not often actually sharing the content. Okay? Do not give in to the threats. Please never pay money. Never send any additional nudes. That won't help. That'll make things worse. Okay? If you've already paid money, this is a good point. You can check to see whether or not it's been collected. If not, you can cancel. But keep as much information as you can about the communication. Reach out to police, please, and we will do our best to follow the breadcrumbs back to the offender. We have very recently, as of this week, received word that arrests have been made in Nigeria, where 3 offenders there had targeted hundreds of North American youth in this very way, and they're awaiting extradition to the US. So that's very hopeful news for us that are in the field of investigating these cases. And please reach out for help and support. Tell an adult who can help you. Okay, you don't have to deal with this on your own. There are supports, and I'm going to get to a couple of those. I know that Ron has already mentioned the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. They're excellent. They specialize in the content that we're providing you tonight. They do a much better job than we ever can. They have resources there for every age group, for parents. They also host Project Arachnid, okay? And that is a toolkit meant to locate child sexual abuse material online and have it removed by the host. And that can also include CSAM that is created by our children here in London. We're able to create what's called a hash value of that material, and they can scan the internet looking for it, and wherever it's found, contact the host and have it removed. It doesn't give people ultimate peace of mind, but at least it's a step in the right direction to get this stuff taken down, which is often our kids' biggest fear. Okay. Need Help Now is also excellent. They're assisting families to have the CSAM content removed. They offer direct access to specific platforms. So if you knew, for instance, that your material that you had created and sent to somebody had been distributed through Snapchat, you could go to needhelpnow.ca, click on the Snapchat link, and it would put you in direct contact with that platform or give you a checklist of how to go about having it removed. So this last stat is just meant to explain the increase in prevalence of these types of offenses. So the offenses that I've talked about today, the child pornography, the internet luring, they form the bulk of these reports. This was just released in May of last year, so about a year ago, and it gives stats from 2014 to 2020. This is Canada-wide, okay? This is rates per 100,000 population. Unfortunately, they have not yet released stats for 2021, 2022. What I can say, though, from a local point of view, is that our cases have been increasing at an exponential rate in the last few years. And I think that may partly have to do with the increase in internet exposure due to the pandemic. As well, the platforms that I mentioned, Google, TikTok, etc., have started to use technology that's bringing more of the offending to their attention, and so it's reported more to the police. So those two things in conjunction are creating the increase, but it's going in a bad direction. It's going in a very bad direction, and so that's why we're here tonight. The way to stop it is to just monitor what our kids are doing as closely as we can, and just try to remove them from being targets. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope you understand the laws a little bit better and what we're facing here locally. And thanks very much, guys, for having me here tonight.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. We're going to ask Ron to also come back on screen as well with us. We do apologize to the audience that we've gone a little bit over time already, but we also know that this is a really, really important topic. And so, if folks could join us for the period of time they could, that's excellent. But we do want to take the time to also facilitate the Q&A because we know that there are really, this presentation was so full of useful tidbits of information, including slides from Ron and Jeremy's portion of the discussion that I took snapshots of and thought, well, I think I need to keep that on my phone for good. So I really hope that others did the same. And if you didn't have an opportunity to do that, or you're not in a place where you have a pen to write something down or a phone to take a snapshot, just know that will produce a recording of this entire session and upload it to our website for future use as well. But if we could ask maybe Christy to let us know where we're at with different audience questions, then hopefully we can provide some useful answers.
Perfect. Yeah, and there is one. And Ron, I know that you responded, but I don't know if everybody can see the response. I think it might just be us. So, and I very much appreciate this question as someone that struggles with technology. So, Ron, when you were speaking, someone was asking if there's a service that parents can go to help, because the things that you were saying and listing, the person was like, yes, yes, yes. But how do I do any of that stuff? So I concur with that person. And if you can just kind of share what your response was or suggestions, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is a great question. And, so the question is there a service that parents can go to as in an actual person as well? And I can't put forward a person or a company name, but I did try doing a web search. And the terms that I used for my web search were on-site computer help. So it's not, it may not have been obvious to a lot of people that that would be a good search term to use to find a company that may be able to help them with setting up parental controls in their home. So any of the companies that I saw that came up in my search results would be suitable to contact and inquire, do they do this type of work? I can't say whether they do or don't, but that would be my first step.
And then just to add to that, another opportunity was something that I mentioned earlier. And again, here is just an example, but Google itself offers a program called Family Link. And so I happen to have that. It's just an example of a program, but on this Family Link app, I can set any device that's connected to it that belongs to my children, daily limits, downtime, content restrictions, app limits, account settings, and device and battery life, including location access. So here is an example of something that you could Google search again to find out all the details, how to use it, and potentially use it on your device in order to see the devices of your children as well. Again, I'm not recommending anything. I'm just saying it's one example of something that parents could use in order to have a little bit more access and insight. And through this very same thing, any device that's connected to it has to request permission from the administrator in order to add an additional app.
Nice, very nice.
And Jeremy, I'm just wondering, oh, sorry, you wanted to touch on that. Jeremy, you were about to speak.
There is also a local not-for-profit charity called Internet Sense First that we have partnered with, and their mandate is specifically in that area of how the technology behind keeping our children safe. So again, Internet Sense First. If you just Google that, you'll find a way to contact that charity.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'm just wondering, Jeremy, I'm not sure, not to get too complicated, but what about if it's peer to peer? Like, what if I have images of, like, me and Tiffany are both in grade 10 and she sends me images of her, like, how does that change any of the dynamics or like the law from what you shared
If
with
I
us? Or
send it to
does
Christy and Christy sends it to someone else in grade 10, is that, I mean, are there any differences there?
We're seeing that, unfortunately, very regularly, where minors, grade 10, grade 8, grade 9, what have you, are receiving it from a friend, sending it to someone, and then making the bad decision to post it into a group scenario on Snapchat or whichever app. And by the letter of the law, they have committed those crimes. There's no exception there. Okay. When a youth sends it to anyone, it's distribution. Okay. And when a minor, or sorry, when anyone uploads that sexual material to a group, they've again committed distribution offense. Okay. If we were to send to criminal court, to our youth court, each and every time that scenario occurs, they wouldn't be happy with us. They just don't have the capacity to deal with it. So in those scenarios when that's happened, what we do is meet with the families, meet with the schools, and explain to them what the laws are in a similar way than that I have done here tonight with you guys, where you just make it obvious this is a crime. There's a bad decision that's made here. How can we make a better decision in the future? How can we prevent this from repeating itself? So we treat it as an educational opportunity, but by the letter of the law, there is a crime that's been committed. Okay.
Which I think is really important to share with our children and youth, that that is a crime, and so they really need to think twice before they're doing things like that. Now, we can appreciate that it's 7:42, and so folks might have to come and go as they need to, but we really would like to ask, are there any more questions? Are there any other things that are coming up that you can use the Q&A function to let us know, that you would be interested to kind of learn more about? Christy, are you seeing any more questions in there?
No,
No?
not right
Okay.
now. No.
And so, knowing that, what we'd like to offer you just in conclusion is a couple of sort of kind of concluding remarks, but also access to information and access to key contacts for future use. So first, Christy and I would both like to say to Jeremy and Ron, thank you so much for lending your knowledge and expertise to our audience today. It's so valuable, and helping us to understand how to improve our awareness of internet activities of our children and youth, and then how to protect them from online predators and visiting places they shouldn't necessarily go, or even be aware that that's something that's dangerous. This is all really must know information, including what to do if you do have concerns that your child has been lured or contacted. And so we just want to convey that we know that the time and effort you have lent us to help our community understand these safety practices is truly appreciated. And we know it is definitely above and beyond all of the really important work you already do. So thank you so, so much for joining us and being willing to partner with us on this material. It is so valuable to our community. And then also, thank you to our audience who has joined us as well. And so in the coming weeks, like I mentioned, there will be a recording of this webinar posted on our website for you to be able to review and access over time. And we really do encourage you to share this information as widely as you can, because, knowledge, information, and awareness is the enemy of the predator. And so the more that we can communicate with one another, the more that we can support one another, the more that we can be in the know, then the more protected our children are. So we would also like to bring to your attention that if you have any questions or require more information about this webinar or even our project overall, this slide before you highlights key contact information. And so you'll see there's my email. And again, this slide has full of live links, so you can click it right now. There's my email. There's the email of my other project partner, Caitlin Chow. Christy's isn't on here, but if you have a question for Christy, all you do have to contact us and we'll send it on to Christy. And so we encourage you to do that if you have a more personal or private question that you'd like answered or some more information that you'd like to access. We also do in this project want to continue to bring you timely and relevant topics that support your needs as caregivers in our community. And so we would really greatly appreciate you taking even just a few moments. This particular feedback takes about 4 minutes. If you could complete that for us to provide us with feedback about tonight's session, we'd really appreciate that. It really just helps us better serve our community as we move forward in the project. And the last link that you'll see here is just where we like to highlight our website, where you can find more information about past and future workshops and recordings, the feedback form, a suggestion box for future topics, or if you'd like to drop us a line because you think there's a community partner that's not yet included or hasn't done the presentation that you think would be really helpful for other parents or caregivers. And if you go to that website, you'll also see at the top of the site a link to sign up for our mailing list, which means you could receive regular notice about presentations that we host, but also any offerings from other community organizations in our community that bring it to our attention, then we will blast it through our mailing list as well. So that was a big mouthful, and it is 7:46. But to conclude, we do wish everyone well on your daily journey, and we hope that you join us again in future workshops. I know the sun is still shining and the birds are still chirping, so you've got some daylight left to go grab out there. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to our presenters and to Christy and to everyone in the room, and we hope you take care. Have a great night.